welcome everyone at our podcast about MACH MidMarket. Before we start, I think it's good to introduce each other. Maybe Adrian, you can start.
Yeah, so my name is Adrian Collier. I'm the product manager at Propeller. I've got a background in e-commerce, MACH, CMS. Yeah, essentially B2B business at kind of mid-market enterprise scale.
Great. Yes. And my name is Jans Graver. I am commercially responsible at Propeller, and I'm one of the two founders together with Jeroen. First question before I start, actually, Adrian. We named this podcast MACH MidMarket. MACH pronunciation is very Dutch. How do you pronounce it in English, actually?
We would kind of normalize it to Mac. So
Okay.
more like, like an Apple Mac.
Okay.
We don't do the Mach, but I've lived here for long enough now that I tend to kind of add that in anyway.
Yeah, so in our podcast, we MACH.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. We're going to talk about the mid-market. What is the mid-market according to you? Where does it start? Where does it end? Any thoughts on that one?
So I think the big differentiator for me, at least when it comes to mid-market in Mac commerce, is around the kind of technology choices. So mid-market starts when organizations are taking technology seriously and actually spending a bit more significant time and energy making the right technology decisions rather than just choosing the first vendor they choose or trying to just go for that one size fits all. There's a lot of more considerations when it comes to kind of how you pull things together, but particularly on the technology side, I find that you've got a kind of technology decision process. And so you're evaluating multiple vendors and trying to understand the long-term value and the future-proofing of your solutions. But that's on the technology side. What do you see on the business side?
Yes, so from an organizational perspective, and I did some Googling, and there are many answers, but let's say our definition, I think it's companies between 10 million revenue and 500 million revenue. That's a little bit where it's pending between those. Above, we name it enterprise. I think enterprise has also different requirements, a different way of using MACH technology. Maybe we can explain that a little bit as well. And below, you have small, medium business. And small, medium business is small Zoho, small office, home office. And then you have medium, and medium is maybe between 1 million, 10 million, potentially also interesting for us. But I think our sweet spot is really mid-market. The definition I just gave.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think the mention of Zoho kind of really is highlighting this because Zoho has this suite that they roll out to kind of small and medium businesses where you've got something and then you just keep adding all of these extras without really thinking about where you're getting it from. The overhead of making a choice and thinking about it too much is way more expensive than maybe any differences you might get in terms of monthly costs. Whereas once you're starting to ramp up and you're moving into those bigger volume of subscriptions and more customized services, then you need to really think a little bit harder about what solutions you're going for and then start working out how all these fit together. I think one of the big steps you probably see from small to medium is the removal of hey, I've got everything in an Excel sheet and I keep uploading it into different applications to I really need this to be automated and kind of stuck together. And I think mid-market is the first sector, first scale where that's a requirement. And people don't want to have to keep moving data around manually because of all the errors associated with that.
Yeah, so I think they have the processes in place. There is a digital transformation coming, but they don't have, and that's the difference that I see with enterprise, they don't have their own, let's say, business architects, IT architects to build an own ecosystem of applications. I think they're looking for solutions and partners who can take care of the end-to-end platform.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The kind of hiring of a solution architect or a kind of company architect for the technology side definitely enters into that enterprise scale. Below this point, you've generally got a couple of people who know a bit more about the way that the organizational technology works, and they tend to be lumped with the responsibility. But this could be anybody from the IT director, if there is one, to an operations guy or a finance guy or even somebody in sales, whoever just happens to have the most knowledge about what services are already in use and how these things are working today.
Yeah, correct. And how do you see the relationship, let's say, from a partner's perspective and the mid-market? I think that's also different compared to enterprise.
Yeah, I think what I've seen at least is partners start to play a role in the market. Lower than this, and I wouldn't really call them the relationship a lot of organizations tend to have with partners tends to be more, I guess, contracting based. Whereas when you start getting into that scale of mid-market, then it's really a partner. You're working together. It's a longer-term engagement, not just a single project. But at the same time, unlike in enterprise where you're kind of handing over certain decisions and maybe projects, in mid-market, that can be a whole business unit that's being assigned to a partner, whether that's a development unit or kind of an implementation team, as well as management and administration of the things that you put in place. So partners can play a varying role, but they really start to be important because they provide specializations in gaps where the enterprise or the company haven't yet hired an architect. And so a partner will be able to provide that kind of service when it comes to choosing a technology, which may only be necessary, for a few hours in a month.
Yeah. So the other thing I see is if I'm speaking a lot with mid-market companies, and 9 out of 10, they only have, let's say, functional requirements, features, functionality of the platform. When you speak to partners serving mid-market customers, they also look at the technology, the architecture. That's for them very important. And the customers themselves, they always say it should be future-proof. And that's a very broad definition. And I think partners understand really good what's future-proof. And that's, I think, why MACH is so interesting for mid-market customers, despite customers not even asking for it themselves. I think for partners, it is important.
Yeah, no, completely. I think, like you say, future-proof is a very broad term. And I would say everybody from a sole trader working on their own to a huge organization would have future-proof as their requirements. But what that future means is very different depending on the type of organization you are. And in mid-market, you're looking to kind of stabilize and grow, and making technology choices in MACH, particularly when it comes to kind of how specialized you want your solutions to be, certainly plays a really big factor. So being able to, for example, choose a solution that has a baseline level of functionality that will suit your processes today, but also won't cost a fortune to evolve that into a more specialized solution, next year or in a couple of years' time. And that kind of composable element that is core to MACH and the way that that's kind of pulled together can be really important in making those choices. That being said, when you compare this to, say, an enterprise making these decisions, it's important that you don't have 100 different applications all working together. Your teams are much smaller. So you might have a marketing team of several people, and trying to get those people to work with 15 different applications in order to get the product catalog online is never going to work. When you've got 100 people doing this job in an enterprise organization, you can split that up and they can all have their own responsibilities. But there are some parts of this, maybe you've got some 3D or really high cool stuff you want to show with your product. Over time, it's important that you can start with something today and expand and maybe replace or extend certain parts of your architecture with something that is more suited towards an enterprise organization, which is the part of your business that is ready to get that far.
Yeah. So in regards to Propeller, because we say we are focusing on the mid-market, what makes Propeller so suitable to mid-market businesses?
From my role, my perspective, I think the biggest sales point we have is we do everything. And that's a very big statement. I'll try and clarify that a bit now. But we have baseline functionality for a huge breadth of the commerce experience. So we have a PIM where you can store, maintain, and enhance and enrich your product content. We have a CRM component where you can manage your user data. We process orders. We have an extensive amount of pricing and configuration options that meet a huge number of the use cases out there in the market today. Now, being able to provide all of that in one box means that a mid-market can implement with Propeller and at least cover the baseline of their functionality requirements across a huge number of those segments. Now, it means that you can get started quickly. And if one of those components, say the PIM, isn't quite good enough for you, or you have more advanced growth needs, you can expand and replace that over time without necessarily needing already to find 5, 6 different vendors to work with and piece all that together. But yeah, that's from the pure technology point of view. I think on the implementation project, this is something, I know you've seen a lot more of in your experience. So how do you see the differences?
Yeah, so for me, and then you're talking about the implementation side,
the kind of projects, I guess. So, typically when I get involved with companies in Propeller, they're already here. Yeah. So, you speak with them in early stages and really understand the problems that they're facing in the kind of early stages of why they're even talking to Propeller.
Yeah. So that's, I think, and that's what I've said before. They're really looking at functionality. They want a solution. Our strategy is we go indirect now. So we work with partners. And then the technology part becomes part of it as well, the architectural part. And one thing when we so far were working with direct, it was about we need today these functionalities, these features. And the question I always ask is like, okay, it's very good that you know what you need today, but do you consider somewhere what you need for tomorrow, the year after? Because you should invest in a platform that will be relevant in a few years from now as well. And how do you secure that? And they never think about that. They always think about today, and there is a list with 50 or 100 features. But the thing is, if I ask them, it's evolving. 2 years from now, what do you need? No idea. Are you sure you're going to invest in a platform that is scalable enough and composable so you can address these needs for tomorrow, the day after? They never realized it. And I think that's, by the way, the strength of having a partner, making also the technology choices. And then I think we're talking about composable. I think that's what I always advise. Not Propeller, but at least composable, B2B, very good. And at the end, I hope and I think it should be Propeller, but that's another thing. But that's what stands out to me. Let me ask. And I was thinking about that one as well. I attended some events the recent month, and I posted about it as well on LinkedIn. It's at the moment MACH. It's known. I think it's very expensive projects, and time to market, 2 years is not. It's happening sometimes. It takes 2 years and sometimes millions even for implementation. That doesn't work in mid-market. Mid-market, I think it should be 6 months, 8 months, something in between. Time to market. Budgets are different, much different, not above 1 million, far from. And that's the other thing. So I don't know how you see that difference, because enterprise has different requirements. They're maybe a little bit more patient. However, I start to see that even there, budgets are limited and time to market. Can you say something about that? And also maybe in relation to our platform?
Yeah, so I see the same things. I mean, the typical enterprise implementation project is something that anybody who's worked in, I guess, like a B2B space for any period of time becomes a norm. You've got projects that start that people start a job, or you start the project and you're working with a team, and by the time you finish that project, that entire team is different.
Yeah.
They last for years. I think one of the reasons that's been the norm was because of the stability. And what we see more recently is because the world and the climate is becoming less predictable. Even enterprises aren't sure that embarking on a 5-year implementation project is worthwhile. Maybe in 5 years we don't need this, or we might not exist as a company, so we need to move faster. So when it comes to kind of implementing with Propeller, we really kind of can leverage that land with the base functionality and be able to do everything in one go. And while obviously this doesn't mean that you've got the same kind of expansive set of functionalities or the same perfectly crafted solution towards your organization you would get if you spend 5 years working on it. You've got multiple teams, and each one of those teams in these big projects tends to have their end-to-end processes crafted together from different technologies so that they can do their job perfectly. And I think one of the real benefits of MidMarket is the organization is still flexible. You can actually discuss with a team and say, well, you've done this the same way for the last 3 years. We could replicate that, but that's going to cost us a lot of time. If we change your processes a bit, then we can implement with the standard functionality that we have out of the box and reduce your time to market and reduce the overall costs and save a lot of time. And that kind of organizational flexibility is something the mid-market's been known for a while. They're always keen to try and save costs, get to market, because in 12 months' time, they actually don't know if they're going to be competitive in this area, so they need to be live. But actually, I see that pattern being matched a bit more on the enterprise side as well, where starting, it's a phrase you use frequently, land and expand. So you actually get to implement a solution and then you go live with it. People can use it. You actually start getting value from what you've put in place, and then you improve and you refine the pieces that need refining. I can't count on my hands or feet combined the number of times I've seen an organization really fight hard for not changing a process or for keeping a team's work the same. When after you go live and something's changed, the team themselves say, well, actually, this is better or just as good as it was before. We should have just given up in the beginning and gone with this.
Yeah. So partners, and we're now working with partners and large partners. I think we both notice it. They need to get used to the fact that we have on one hand composable MACH, on the other hand, it's feature rich. Can you explain a little bit our experiences and why we think it's good? But it's good that they realize it. I think why for mid-market an offering that we have might be a very good solution.
Yeah, it's definitely something that takes a bit of, I guess, massaging into the conversation, because I think partners typically approach this as, if everything is composable, they have complete freedom.
Especially when they used to enterprise projects.
Yes.
Than doing a mid-market project. This is, I think, what we've seen.
Yeah, completely. So in enterprise, you've got freedom. So you choose the best vendors from every single subsegment. And you pull everything together and create that kind of perfect end solution for your customer. And even when you start shrinking down the budgets and you start talking about mid-market, it's still not intuitive that you can have a platform like Propeller, which does tick the boxes of, hey, it's composable, it's API driven, so you can expand it, you can change things. But you get everything or most of the things you need out of the box. And so you don't need to put in all those hours on connecting different applications together. Now, that can be challenging for some, I guess, from a sales approach when you start thinking, okay, where are my partner hours going to come from? But I really think the partners need to see this as an opportunity. And when we've discussed, they start seeing it. They do see the opportunity where instead of spending a lot of time, configuring an API to get the PIM to talk to the order system, to talk to the CRM, they can actually spend those hours creating really cool, cutting edge and differentiating features and functionality for the end customers. What I've noticed is budgets that organizations have don't shrink when you choose a more optimal solution. If you compare us with other more, I guess, some competitors that have less out of the box, where you need to piece things together, customer choosing us wouldn't then shrink the budget they have available for the implementation project because they've chosen something which they get more out of the box. They would put more of their dreams into that implementation. And so a partner can spend less time on the day-to-day, the bread and butter, the things that aren't really going to change the needle, that aren't going to push the boundaries at all, and really focus on those cool pieces of technology where they replace that specific part of the front end and can create a cutting-edge customer experience, or start optimizing other business processes which you would normally not touch because you spent all of your time building a standardized My Account system, or you've spent a lot of time integrating two platforms where in Propeller those are native to our solution.
You just mentioned the bread and butter, and I think we have a name for it. We name it Accelerator. Can you explain what an accelerator is, or bread and butter? Let's say the standard features, functionality maybe. How does it work then in a MACH composable context?
Yeah, so I think I would expect, so this is something that we do, not all of our competitors, not all of the people in the market do, and I think it's something that is really optimized for mid-market. We've chosen this because it makes sense for our customers, and for us an accelerator is a bit like a plugin, but more like it's a set of functionalities that we see most of our customers need in this way. I think the best example, I mentioned it, is the My Account system. So in a front end, when your customers log in or your end customers log in, they want to see their recent orders. They want to see their favorites list. They want to see their address details, anything about their account. That's standard. And we've built accelerators for varying different front ends, and that's something we're continuing to evolve. It's an ongoing, and we'll touch on the technologies that we support in shortly. But the accelerator themselves, they provide all of this out of the box. And it's designed in a way so that 90+% of our customers can use this out of the box. And so they don't need, or the partners don't need to spend their time customizing or creating these kind of standard screens, but can then really create the cool stuff that goes on top of that. So rather than having a My Account page that they've spent hours designing and putting together, they can create a product tour that takes them through the web shop or takes them through the system in a way that makes sense for their customers, or configuration tooling. So it's essentially the bread and butter, the standard pieces that you want in your front end, and we've provided the way basically to get started with that very quickly and easily. That is relatively technology independent, or at least that's definitely more in the direction we're going. And so partners can leave that behind. Now, it does mean that your hours as a partner will be spent doing different things. You won't have those kind of standard hours where every project has a certain number of them as kind of a baseline. But I believe that this will improve customer satisfaction. I mean, every customer needs this. 90% of them are the same. So why should a customer have to pay for every partner to do the same thing over and over and over again? We've provided this out of the box. It can be modified and customized. So if any customer has a real unique set of requirements, then that can be taken into account. But that time can be better spent, on the stuff that matters and the stuff they really care about.
So I believe we have 3 different flavors, accelerators. Maybe you can name them and explain a little bit what they do.
So our first one is a WordPress accelerator. And this, works with the WordPress CMS. It gives a native commerce experience to WordPress. That means that WordPress is then being used as the front end as well as the CMS. So in the Mac world, a lot of things are headless. When this our accelerator doesn't use WordPress headless, it uses WordPress native front end and provides all the pages and templates out of the box. So you get all the My Account pages, product browsing, product catalog pages, search, all of this stuff just comes. It really is a shop in a box. And for those organizations with a really tiny marketing team, this works really, really well because they can get to market very quickly. You can use it with an existing WordPress front end or website if you've got one, and you don't need to learn hugely complex new technology in order to kind of go to market with it. We also have a Vue storefront accelerator, and this works under the hood. It works in exactly the same way as the WordPress one. However, Vue storefront isn't a CMS. So to use the Vue storefront, you still need a headless CMS, something like Storyblock or Contentful. There are lots of others out there. So you need something to power your content. But the Vue storefront accelerator takes the communication with the Propeller backend and standardizes it. That means that if you're building a front end in something like React or Vue, obviously, Vue storefront, then you can use a standard query language. I'll get a little bit technical, but not too technical. So you would, in the front end, in the templates, you would say get product, and that asks the backend for a product. And the Vue storefront layer means that the Propeller product can be called in the same way that any other commerce product could be called. And we maintain those templates. So as we expand on the functionality that we provide out of the box, we feed that into the Vue storefront accelerator so that you don't then need to keep maintaining and keeping that up to date. Now, the third flavor you mentioned is a new one, and this is something we're focused on at the moment, and that is an SDK. And an SDK is a software development kit, and this then takes the same concepts we've got with the Vue storefront accelerator, but tries to take away some of the technology dependencies and give our partners more freedom in terms of the front-end technology they want to use. It's still very much on the single-page application type framework, so you are still talking about Vue, React, Next.js, and Vercel, but then the SDK can provide all of these queries and provide all of the communication with Propeller. So you don't quite get necessarily all of the pages like you would do with our WordPress accelerator, but you do get all of the queries that power those pages. So you can get the query that says, I want the My Account section with my orders, my favorites, and those queries, along with all the data that's required in them, is pre-programmed into the accelerator. So you ask for it, you get all of that data back, and then you can render it in the front end very easily. So it takes away a big part of the heavy lifting from implementing that part of the application, of the front-end application. So again, your partners can focus on the bits that really matter. You can get to market quickly, and you don't have to miss anything. I think one thing we've seen is it's very easy for a partner or a customer to say, well, let's start with just a web shop, and then we'll add the My Account section later. And I think what I've seen, at least, is if end customers start using web shop that doesn't have this information, they probably won't use the web shop. Yeah. They'll call their account manager. And you need to create this pattern on launch. So being able to provide everything out of the box means, that starting package is way more rich and at least feature complete end to end.
Okay. the accelerators, I believe they're open source, meaning that partners can use them to add services, work with the accelerator.
Yeah, so they're fully open source. All the code is available online. So that means, there's two sides to this. You can take the code, you can modify it, and add your own features. You can also bring back to the community. So, as we grow our partner network, we're hoping to be able to also expand and build cool things, and then bring this back into the plugins or the code bases, so that we can, offer a much wider set of functionality over time that is being contributed by our entire ecosystem of partners. That makes everybody's life easier, and it means that we can, again, focus more and more on the cool stuff, the stuff that, your customers are actually going to partner for.
Yeah, no, this is really cool, I think. So on the features in Propeller, how do we, but you as a product manager, decide what will be in it, what will be out of scope? Because it should be composable on one hand, on the other hand.
Yeah, it's this is a big question. This is product management, I guess.
This is about your job.
Yeah. So how do I do my job? So on a small personal note, I think the biggest thing is to not have an ego about this. So I will say, I don't know the answers. I'm one person. I have opinions, but it's really important in this role to pay attention and to talk to the people around me. So, I talk with you and with our sales team, who are in touch with our customers. Our engineering team has, I think, over 100 years combined of e-commerce experience implementing projects on behalf of customers in our sector. I also spend a lot of time talking to our customers, prospects, and kind of understanding what their needs are. And this, I think, is the most dangerous part, because you need to take all of this feedback and then work out what is the common denominator. So I would say you need to think of every customer, but no specific customer. Or you take a customer and you shave the top part off, and that then becomes the default. So lots of research. Lots of analysis on what gets used, and then common UX principles, and trying to define something that's easy to use that actually does something. I mean, there's a risk associated with, hey, I'm going to take the average or the most common, and not try and give any specific customer. Well, you might end up with something that nobody uses because it's no one specific customer. So, it's a bit of a juggling act. But I think what we've done with the accelerators is exactly this. I think we've found that it's not necessarily something that every customer has 90% of. It's 90% of our customers can use 100% of it, and that means that our uptake is high. And that last 10%, this is where we need bigger conversations. We need to understand, okay, what is the difference? And this is where, we can be smart when it comes to the project implementations, and the partners. And the partners can add their, specializations and their expertise in order to take that last mile.
Yeah. On extensibility, how easy is it to extend actually the Propeller platform? Should be easy, actually. That's what the market requires.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, because I think when you look at it as a whole, this is part of the bread and butter of Propeller. So while there are some integrations which kind of we see as kind of cutting edge or flavorful. So if somebody says, hey, I want a new PIM, this is something that we need to discuss and define. Okay, how are these workflows going to work? What's the process? What's the data flow? But I don't think we've got a single project in Propeller which doesn't integrate with another application.
ERP is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
CRM more often as well. But also in manufacturing, you have specific applications where we integrate with logistics. It's indeed a lot. And of course, the CMS side, our GraphQL API, because we have different API sets, I believe.
Yeah. So we have a GraphQL API which powers front ends. So this is great for kind of getting a single small data set at one time. But we also have REST APIs for data integration. So with, like you mentioned, ERPs, CRMs, and these integrations, these data integrations are fundamental to most, if not all, of our implementations, our customers. And there are common patterns that we use. So typically, we notice that it makes sense for us to take the data from an ERP. So for particularly user data, as well as product data, if the ERP has it, or pricing information, so that we can feed that into the front end. Our GraphQL API has been specifically designed to run a fast performing front end, a web shop. Most ERPs out there, if they have APIs, they're not optimized for this kind of use case. And so, we've found out the painful way in the past that if you try and integrate your web shop with an ERP's API directly, then it's slow, or you might hit usage limits or throttling, and so there are patterns that we have to kind of bypass this. But then, there are some more of the more modern or the more interesting integrations or extensions that we see nowadays. This is where we start to have more of a conversation. What are the data flows that make sense? Especially as we start seeing more applications that our customers want to integrate with that are designed for powering front ends. I think we've had several conversations about things like configuration tooling, which I know in the manufacturing world is becoming really popular. And maybe what do you see in that side, and how is that demand affecting kind of the way that we do our deals?
Yeah, so the thing is, B2B commerce is much broader than, let's say, only doing some orders, because configuration is a big thing, is becoming a big thing. And what I see is it's more and more often the CPQ needs to be available in the front end, for example. And maybe not because in the front end you're going to configure a complete machine, but you can use it for what functionality is in it, what kind of costs are associated with it. And if it's interesting, you reach out to a sales engineer like, hey, and we have some examples where our customers, they have 1,000 requests for proposals a month, and 950 turned out, this is not what I'm looking for. Actually, what you do is you bring these 950 that are not suitable actually to the front end, and that means the only 50 that are positive go to a sales engineer. So we're going to more and more work with in the ecosystem with other applications around CPQ, around other applications, what you need to bring to the front end. And I think that's a big difference also between B2C and B2B. B2C, I see the front end is really important for conversion. But in B2B, I see more importance maybe the backend integrations with other systems, so that data flows from one application to the other, an ecosystem of applications. And that's a big difference. And I think also the partners we're looking for should also understand how integrations work at the backend and integrate different systems with each other. And maybe it's good to come to our maybe last question now. And the question is the developer's choice. That's a quote you brought up, actually. Our platform should be the developer's choice. What do you mean with it? What do you try to achieve with the developer's choice?
Yeah. I mean, this is the dream, right? You have your target market, and you want to be the product or provide the product that is suited to your target market. And I think when you're making an e-commerce platform, it's very easy to be focused, like many of our customers are, on functionalities and just saying, okay, well, we can do really complex pricing. We can provide integrations across the entire spectrum. But how a product is implemented by the development team, whether that's an in-house development team or a partner development team, as we're seeing more often, this has a huge impact on how likely it is they are to continue to do renewals, how likely the team is to want to continue to use core components and expand rather than replace, and ultimately how likely they are to recommend to do this again. In-house team is way less impactful here. If you start with a company and they didn't like the implementation process halfway through, chances are it's too late. They might not renew in 3 years, but that's one. Whereas a partner, you're kind of hoping that they have a really great experience, and so the next project happens again. So what do we do to achieve this? Well, we have as a product manager, I probably shouldn't say this, but we have our engineers, our developers design our platform. So all of the functionality, the way that things work, is really closely designed and specified together with our team. They've been, so the journey that Propeller has taken is a unique one. We've been through essentially a project consultancy organization where most of our engineering team have been implementing 50 plus very unique projects each. So they all bring a huge amount of experience of how the different flavors of implementation projects look. So when it comes to working out how, for example, our product functionality needs to work, we work really closely with our team, not just on, hey, what does that need on the front end, but how would a developer implement this? What do they need? How should our APIs respond? What kind of data should they expect? So our GraphQL API is fully federated, and this is something that is so valuable to engineers. So you have one endpoint, and that's a URL, you have an API key, and you can access everything you need from that one endpoint, whether that's product data, user data, order data. It all comes through the same place. And we federate resources inside each other. So if you are connecting to a product, you can then dive further into that product and get the media associated with it. You can get the customer-specific pricing associated with it. And this means that you can very quickly not just build a platform and build a front end using this data, but you can also start to understand the way that the model works natively. So after you've spent some time implementing, you really understand the way that Propeller is designed. And that makes your second implementation much easier. The other thing I think that's worth mentioning is on the REST API side. So we do huge amounts of data integrations, and some of these involve synchronizing 100,000, if not 1 million products. REST works one at a time. If you try and synchronize a 500,000 product catalog with REST, typically, you're going to be doing a lot of calls, and every time you do a call, you've got overhead associated with that. You need to make the connection, you need to send it, and you need to receive a response. We've created something that is REST-like, which is called a bulk REST interface, that allows us to actually send a huge volume of independent requests together in one go. Now, it all depends on your payload. So if you're synchronizing products with media, images, that tends to be a smaller number. So you're talking 50 at a time. But if you're synchronizing users, where you've just, say, got names and email addresses, or just product raw data, so just text information, you can do those in the 500 or 1,000 at a time. So you can then synchronize everything in a much faster pattern. And yeah, this is something that our engineering team said, this is a crucial requirement for us to be able to scale to what our customers need. It's not something that our customers ask for, because from their perspective, the data is either synchronized or not. It doesn't really matter how long that takes. But an engineer's experience is, hey, I need this to be over so that my next synchronization task can take place.
Great. So I think that's it for this podcast. Do you still have some open ends or?
I think not really. I think it makes sense if you're a partner and you're interested in understanding more. Actually, we're open to discuss, but also we have a public API and public API documentation. And like I mentioned, because everything is federated, you can actually browse the documentation by diving through it. It's hyperlinked as you go deeper. So you can instantly see the value and the breadth of the functionality that we provide. We'd love to talk.
We do. Hey, thanks for now. I'll see you at the next one.
Yeah, absolutely, Jens.
Okay, bye-bye.